Liberal and conservative America, they go together like ketchup and ice cream. Both have had their times. The liberals have had the progressive era and the New Deal slash Depression era. Conservatives had the Gilded Age and the 1980s. Modern conservatism began in the 1960s thanks to a Mr. Barry Goldwater from Arizona, a stout anti communist and very conservative politically. His early policies were harsh and conservative, foreign to many in the government at that time. Goldwater would run unsuccessfully as the Republican nominee in 1964 against Lyndon B. Johnson, but his unorthodox methods and opposition to the Civil Rights Amendment meant that he would only carry the Deep South and Arizona, his home state. However, a young, successful actor from the 1940s and 50s got his political start in the 1964 Goldwater campaign. That young actor was known as Ronald Reagan. His speech, A Time for Choosing, was used to support the Goldwater campaign, and that speech would raise over $1 million. The new conservative wave that would hit in the 1980s was also bolstered by a religious awakening following the wild and groovy years of the late 60s into the 70s. Both religious and conservative folk alike agreed that the 60s and 70s had been too radical and America was on the path towards moral decline. Reagan, being the conservative poster boy, ran for president in 1980, beating Jimmy Carter, successor to Ford and Nixon, two presidents that had failed throughout the 70s, and Carter just ended a rough decade and was unable to win for the Democrats. Reagan's first term can be broadly described by Reaganomics and a further build-up of the military against the evil empire. Reagan would cut taxes to the wealthy, lower inflation, and rebuild the disaster that Carter had left for him in the economic field. Reagan's build-up towards the Soviet Union meant an increase in military spending, including construction of more nuclear warheads. This is the most ramping up that we would see of a U.S.-Soviet conflict that could potentially happen since the mid-60s. And then Reagan's second term was an about-face. He mainly focused on ending the Cold War, with Gorbachev lasting more than a year as the Soviet premier. Reagan and Gorbachev slowly began building ties between the two nations, and eventually Gorbachev would oversee the fall of the Berlin Wall in Berlin, Germany, and the eventual collapse of the USSR in 1991. Reagan's vice president, George H.W. Bush, was president during both the fall of the Berlin Wall and the collapse of the Soviet Union, furthering conservatism into the early 90s.